to be privy to it. I feel like that's okay. How do you feel about that?
Well,
If
I think it's 6 or 1/2 dozen. I think that when
We're
you're
always
talking
gonna
about
circle
donuts,
back.
I think
Just a
that
big circle anyway.
I am sitting next to one of the most intelligent people on this planet. I got to tell you, you missed the conversation, unfortunately. You did come in kind of late. So, but I think the crux of it was the facade of perfectionism. And I think that's the biggest problem. And what was coming to mind as you were speaking was that Mercedes line of perception is not always reality. And how in our lives we could reach a breaking point. This is tough times right now.
Oh my gosh.
I got to tell you, going from a pandemic that's still not over yet.
Right.
Okay, people think it's over.
It's not.
No. One more variant comes through again, you've got a heck of a problem. And then there's war. There's nuclear dynamics going on right now that are scaring the crap out of people. So how do you keep your home sane, your kids protected?
Right.
What are you doing at home?
I embrace all of the facets of my personality when it comes to the domino effect of insanity, of craziness that has been around for going on 3 years now. I accept that as an individual, I am prone to anxiety. I'm prone to worry. I'm prone to being overwhelmed. And I accept that there are going to be moments where I have to cater to that part of who I am. And I recognize that when it comes to my kids, as a parent, I have to acknowledge that their anxiety is just as much a result of their own worries as it is a result of seeing me in a state of distress.
Yep.
So talking to them about the things that worry me in a way that lets them know that it is not on them. My worries are not their problem. And to hold space for them when they talk about their worries. So
Well, you're a mama bear.
yeah, I really am.
Okay.
I really am.
And what happens is when you're a mama bear, you want to protect your children. As a father of a family of 5, I want to protect my family.
Yeah.
But some things are beyond my control to be able to protect.
Right. It's creating a safe space. The world is not a safe
like that.
space,
Yep.
but your home should be for your kids. Always.
Yep.
Always.
And I'll expand on that. Not just your kids, but your significant other or others,
Right.
your family, your friends.
Right.
And if Michael Pritchard was here right now, it is that reaching out.
Yeah.
It is that, hey, how you doing? Are you okay? Because I got to tell you, the way things are stacked up right now, you will have fragile folks who think that it's easier to exit than to stick around.
Yep.
And that is another component here that is on the radar screen that we have to be aware of. And you have to be kind, compassionate, loving
Yep.
to the people around you. And
Strangers.
even to strangers.
Yes, to strangers. I tell my kids all the time, if you can't be anything else in this world, be kind.
Huge.
I tell them that. I'm like, above all other things, be kind.
Yeah.
Be smart, be intelligent, be compassionate. Before anything else, be kind because it costs you nothing.
Bingo.
It costs you nothing. Compassion can take a toll. Empathy can take a toll. It requires an emotional fortitude to be able to extend those things endlessly to people. And you can get tired, but it costs you nothing to just be kind.
Yeah. And share a smile. Smiles are
That's it.
contagious.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like yawns, but in a different way.
But in a better way.
But I think I was sharing with you earlier that it's been a rough week in our house.
Yeah.
My wife is from St. Petersburg, Russia. We're 32 years married, 3 beautiful kids. And our life has been a lot of struggle over the years, different ways. But this dynamic that's going on in Ukraine, so she's St. Petersburg, Russia. My ancestors on my father's side are from Ukraine, from Odessa.
Right.
They left about 100 years ago, but there are possibly relatives of mine
Right.
that I just don't even know
Right.
that are back there in the midst of this slaughter.
Right.
And we are watching a slaughter occur.
Right.
And it hurts. It's not good. So I think that, again, Mary Jane Burke put out something this week, how to talk to your kids about the war.
Right.
And to name this as anything other than a war right now is not right.
Disservice.
And I'm a United States Air Force veteran. And to me, this is beyond comprehension what the leader of Russia has decided to unleash upon a sovereign nation.
Yeah.
And our hands are kind of tied. And I think that's the hardest part.
I think I think you hit the nail on the head right there. This is different. Which is one of the reasons why, the whole concept that it would be World War III is because it's not our land. We are part of NATO, and we're soldiers.
Yep.
In that we are not the leader. We are not, running this show. This is a conglomeration of effort and decisions that need to be made for the betterment of the world. And in the way that our hands are tied, is this man is not Putin. He's kamikaze about this whole thing. Mm-hmm. He's very kamikaze about that. Like, what do you say to somebody who has nothing left to lose? We have backed him into a corner economically. He is not seeing the results that he wants, regardless of the slaughter that is happening. It is not going the way that he expected it to.
He thought it'd be a 2-day rollover.
Right. Yeah. And as a result, we have this animal that is backed into a corner.
Yep. Well said. I think what's going on is that when you look at his world and his situation of what he's created here, he is somebody, I think what was reminding me of what you were just saying, centuries ago, I think it's like 800 AD or something, a philosopher came up with this thought: who has more to lose, somebody with nothing or somebody with everything? Okay, so here's a man with really everything. He's got billions squirreled away in secret accounts around the world. He's got palaces. And Navalny, who was an incredible thorn in his side, who's sitting in prison right now. He's the one that they tried to kill with Novichok, the special nerve agent, in his underwear, of all things. But he was bringing to light what kind of corruption and what kind of world Putin had created in Russia. And when you look at this dynamic, so Putin has everything, so he has a lot to lose. Somebody with nothing, somebody in Ukraine who their house has been bombed, their wife and children have all hopefully left to go to safety somewhere. They're alone to fight. What do they have to lose? Their life. But at a point, you get tired, you get worn down. So this is an onslaught. This is a slaughter. And so bringing it back home, when people who are fragile, it makes it much more easier for them to lean on substances. Go to the alcohol, go to the pot, go to the pills, go to whatever that substance is, trying to numb the pain. That's really a lot of what substance use has been, trying to get more normalized into your world. And
make it work, make whatever situation. To speak on that, as I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking about the socioeconomic disparities and the similarities, and you have, people who have very little and people who have so much, and how the great equalizer of that can be isolation, can be feeling like there's nobody who understands what you're going through, can be that the weight of whatever those experiences are, whether it's living in, a slum with no real food and no job prospects and no real education, or isolated in a tower, expected perfection, feeling like you're never going to be good enough. Like, both of those things can create that sense of isolation, can create that feeling of hopelessness. And not being enough, and not wanting to deal with that. And,
part of what you missed earlier, unfortunately.
It was a really good conversation.
Yeah, it was good. We were rolling hard. Is the stay-at-home moms of the 50s, 60s, and what kind of imprisonment that became, and how they went to their wine and their pills, Valley of the Dolls, this kind of thing, and trying to measure up against others. It's the Joneses. You
Right.
know, oh, if they got a new car, we got to get a new car. If they, it becomes this kind of tit for tat thing.
Right.
But it goes back to perfectionism. And I got to tell you, what rocks your world is when something goes wrong in your perfect world.
Yeah.
And part of being human is resiliency. When you're challenged with something, and it might be medical, you might have a breast cancer diagnosis or prostate cancer, or some other terrible cancer that presents itself and you're told you have 3 weeks to live.
Right.
Or you've got infidelities in the house,
Right.
or you've got whatever it may be. What's that challenge that you're hit with? How gracefully can you deal with it?
Right.
And elegantly, hopefully, and your resiliency to still be standing, because there's a couple creatures out there that are going to outlive us.
Yes, we had that conversation too.
Cockroaches. They'll be here long after we're gone.
Cockroaches, sharks, jellyfish.
Yeah.
I think it'll be around for a while. No, it's resiliency is amazing, and I think that it's something that we have innately in us as humans. And I think that society both heralds and, like, I can't come up with the word right now. It's a double-edged sword. Like, people who can come back again and again and again and again from hardships are obviously very resilient people. They're strong people. They're people who can roll with change or roll with hardship. But for some reason, and I think that it's because it shows a mirror, it's a mirror to humanity.
Yep.
When people are faced with somebody who's been able to overcome, after a while, I feel like society goes, well, what is wrong with you? Like, you keep having these moments, like, you keep dealing with these hardships. Like, this has got to be a you problem. And
Good way to look at it. I think what happens for me is that when your kid falls down, you don't sit there and get on the ground with them and cry. You kind of, oh, come on, let's come on, get up.
Right.
Dust you off. If you got a scraped knee, let's take care of the knee, give them
Right.
some attention, and then you move forward. And I think that when you look at Lincoln, for example, Lincoln had so many failures in his life when you really look at his history, and then he became president during the Civil War.
Right.
Okay? And in our world, there's harsh judgments that are made based on the color of your skin. Okay? Most people will look at a white guy and say, oh, he must have this, that. Well, he might not. You look at African-American person, you make certain assumptions and things like that, and especially how dark that African-American person is.
Yeah, that's
How light, and even in the African-American community, if you're lighter complected or darker complected,
colorism is
it's
really
real within the African-American world.
Absolutely is. It is a bizarre phenomenon.
And you go to Ukraine, apparently there has been a real disparity there, that the African-Americans that are in the Ukrainian world, they have not been allowed to get on the train.
Nope.
So that was like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
What's that about?
They're not allowed to leave. They're stuck.
Yeah. And
They're stuck. But that's, again, like, the global community is being slapped in the face over and over again with the injustices that exist in every nation. And there are universal injustices happening. I mean, they're from the fact that African Americans and Africans are not being allowed to get on trains, they're not being allowed to evacuate the Ukraine. It was similarly in areas of Asia. I can't remember, honestly, if it was China or Japan, but African people and African Americans were being, like, blockaded in their homes. They weren't being allowed. So we're looking at all of these isms, all of these injustices that are happening, and it is, again, the nation wants to present the most perfect image, right?
Yep.
The U.S. is the only country that has a racism issue. That's a U.S. thing.
The United States, if you go with the melting pot theory, and you've got people from all over the world, give us your huddled masses approach.
Yeah.
So you do have people who have come from all over the world trying to make a better life in America.
Right.
And I don't know other countries around the world who have that kind of sign out.
Right.
And once you're here, and if you look at generationally, decades ago, okay, the Italians, the Irish, that so every Puerto Ricans, any population that was coming in a wave into America, they had to make their community.
Right.
Okay, and it's human nature. We're used to hanging out with our own.
Right.
So it becomes this thing of when somebody looks different than you, it's trying to get through that and say, hey,
othering is dangerous.
I have blood just like you.
Right.
I have kids just like you.
Yep.
I have marital problems just like you.
Right.
What?
It's the othering. Othering is the first step to dehumanization. Once you are capable of honestly looking at somebody else and seeing nothing of yourself in them, then it is your hop, skip, and a jump from not even seeing them as human.
Well, it's also in war, you have to make your enemy humanless. You have to take the humanity out of it.
Right.
And part of the story we've heard that this 40-mile-long convoy has been held up a little bit because some of the Russian soldiers are like, nope, don't want to do this. Nope, don't want it. Nope, there's nope. But if they say nope too big or too loud, they'll get the bullet in the head.
Right.
And so this is a manufactured war. And I think what I'm really trying to do in our time together here is draw the global to our local.
Right.
And what we had mentioned in our conversation earlier is that gilded birdcage. I know your audience. I don't know who all of your audience is, but I'm hopeful that if we do have any, let's just say rich marin moms who feel that they're in a gilded birdcage, you got to find a way to open that door and get your freedom.
Right.
Because you're a prisoner of your own world.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one step.
Right.
I think that, unfortunately, in Marin County, our African-American community, if people say, where do most African-Americans live?
Marin City.
Marin City. And, the history of Marin City is forgotten. That was part of another conversation.
Forgotten.
The shipbuilding.
It's a rich
The
history.
war effort.
It's an amazing history.
Share it just a minute of it.
So Marin City was originally created and built to house individuals who had come from all over the U.S. to work in the shipyards during World War II. And it was incredibly diverse. Incredibly diverse. The schools were diverse. There was no segregation in Marin City. So you had people of all colors, creeds, from all over the world. A lot of them came from the Midwest, places like Texas, which is where my family was from, Tennessee, Louisiana. Like these families all came to Marin City because it was work. It was honest work. They knew it wasn't going anywhere. But this housing was built, this entire community was built for the intention of the war effort, right?
Yep.
So it was twofold in that they were bringing people in for the jobs that needed to be done. And then those people were going to be dispersed into the Marin community once those jobs were finished. And so everything that was there was temporary. The way that they had built it was intended to be temporary. And after the war was over, everybody was allowed to leave. Everybody was allowed to go and find jobs except the African Americans who had come from so far away. They were left in a temporary housing situation without the means to diversify into the rest of the community.
They were stuck.
They were absolutely
stuck.
And it's very telling the way that Marin City is designed because there's one way in and one way out. It was not supposed to be a permanent residence. So they had to rebuild it, right? They tore down what would have been the temporaries and they started building permanent residences. And largely they were left alone at the beginning of that reconstruction. So they had grocers, they had schools, they had a hospital, they had a pharmacy.
Really?
They were completely self-sustained at the beginning. They had a swap market where people who were creators and business people were able to go into the center of that community and work and sell their wares. So it was completely self-sustained. You had your matriarchal families, your heads of houses that were established and people came to them. So they had like a council. It was a very, very self-sustaining community. And slowly but surely, all of the things that made them functional were picked out and pulled away and pulled out And down to the very last thing, which really makes a community sustainable, a grocery store. There's no grocery store in that community. Yeah. There is no fresh produce outside of the Target, and we all know how Target is.
Yeah.
In that community. I mean, they're starting to rebuild it. It's policed. It's got its own police department.
Target was only built there 4 years ago.
4 or 5, yeah, something like that.
Molly Stone's is across the freeway and up Bridgeway.
Right.
And when we came into Marin County, 93-ish in there, the flea market was always on that property where all the stores are. That used to be nothing. It used to be just the flea market.
Right.
And no, I agree with you. That is preposterous, because the closest market to Marin City was the liquor store that was at the intersection of Bridgeway going on the freeway.
Yep.
And that is huge. And I think going to another step there is that you know about this couple who had their house, what's the term? Come on. When they had to go in.
The appraisal?
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah. Let's save that one for another time.
That's for another time.
But that shows you the face of this, the evil.
Right.
And the intention.
It is a swiftly moving river underneath. It is a constant current.
Yep.
And to speak on, how insidious it is, Marin isn't incorporated. It is not its own city. It does not have representation.
Wow.
In the county community. It is not a city.
So when you have Ross and Tiburon and Mill Valley,
Sausalito,
they're their own. They have their own police departments. Yeah. This is policed by the sheriff.
Yeah.
And they've caught a lot of flack because they come down and they get a lot of. They
come in. They're not policed by their own.
Got it. I like that.
They're not policed by their own, and we've talked about this many times. We've heard this come up. Police are invested in the communities in which they live, and when you bust them into another community, they are not invested. They get to other. They are not walking down the street and running into these people that they are policing like they would if they were working in their own communities.
Right. Ooh, I love that, because that's really the concept has been community policing.
Right.
But most police, I don't want to say all, but most do not live in the community they police for a couple of reasons. One is affordability. The other one is being recognized, possibly in a negative way. If you were undercover, or if you were it's like, and then you have your children, your spouse, and it becomes problematic. So if you're living...
But at what point? Why has it become problematic? Because this was not an uncommon occurrence once upon a time.
Yep.
It was understood that you saw Officer Bob at the grocery store, still in uniform, off duty, and it was okay.
It was normalized.
Yeah. I grew up in Marin. I knew all the police officers. Whether they lived here or not, my mom worked for the city of Santa Fe. She cut their checks. So it's like...
Oh, I love that.
Like, she worked above them. She did accounts receivable. So they all knew my mom. And by the way, they all knew me. So I grew up seeing the faces of these officers in a whole bunch of different contexts.
Yep.
Whether it was them manning the door at a football event.
Yep.
Or... hanging out on the street. Like, I literally saw the same faces over and over and over and over again throughout my entire childhood. I went to school with their kids.
You know what I love what you're saying right now is because, unfortunately, with the Black Lives Matter, with the defund police, with this whole dynamic that's gone on in our country the last few years, is that taking the SROs out of school sites, for example. For me personally, in my experiences that I've had and that I've seen, I think it is important to have some kind of interface. Now, does it need to be an officer in tack gear? No. It could be an officer in a polo shirt.
Right.
And that's what some communities in Marin County have stepped into now, is having officers show up, not necessarily even in a marked car, unmarked car, because once a marked car is there, it's gained the attention of the students. It's like, oh, somebody's in trouble. Ooh.
You
this kind of
have
thing.
to change you have to change the narrative, right?
Yep.
You have to change the narrative. You have to humanize police. If you're going to have them in schools, they need to be people who students can trust. Yep. And that's a big hill to climb. like I said, I grew up trusting police officers in Marin County. I still feel like my kids are safer here than anywhere else that I can think of to move them.
Yep.
But I am forever cautious. I am forever cautious because they are not the same police officers that I grew up with. This is not the same age that my kids are growing up in. And to humanize or to find that common ground with our youth and our people of authority, I think is going to go a long way to changing, how they interact in situations of conflict.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
And de-escalate.
Right.
To be able to step back a minute.
To be able to step back, to take our next generation of task force of police officers. They're going to come from these upcoming generations. They're going to do it differently.
Yep.
They're going to do it differently. And the good ones, the police officers who know that they need to pass down the right things, should be the ones in the schools. And when we come out of the rise of Trump,
Yep, good way to put it.
The rise of Trump, COVID, this insane war that we are witnessing, we are going to have a really big come to Jesus moment as a community, as a Marin community, and recognize that all of the systems are flawed. All of them, every single last one, whether it's the medical system, whether it's the education system, whether it's the penal system. Structurally, the way that this county is designed is segregated anyway.
Yeah.
Like down to the very roads that we travel, everything needs to be rethought and needs to be brought to the table with the idea of rebuilding, revisiting, reinventing. And I'm hoping that if it doesn't happen with my generation and with your generation, with the people who are in power now, that by the time our young people get to a position where they have power in our community, they are researched, they are educated, and they are prepared to say, not only are we tearing it down, but we already know where we're going.
Love it. Love it. And I think reflecting on a couple of things is in the world of the sheriff's operation, I know them quite well. There's a working group that they really want to start in our community to tackle some of the things that we've been talking about, because there has been a lot of pointing fingers and saying, oh, you.
Okay.
And I'm not making excuses. I mean, you could have a bad officer. You could have a good officer on a bad day.
Yeah.
You know, there's shit that can happen there. But it's going to take community members coming together and saying, and working with, in this case, the sheriff's operation, and saying, guys, you know, policing our own. I love that. That's a huge item. They also have a great youth academy that anybody who's interested in law enforcement, who's high school senior, I believe they can step into the youth academy at the sheriff's operation to see if it's something they'd be interested in. I think that that's another component. What am I hitting here? I'm hitting something.
Did you see it?
Yeah, I saw it. No, I felt I felt like a because it was kind of different than what you were saying earlier.
It isn't. It isn't. How do I word this?
Ra, just put it out there on the table.
Police, the way that police are trained is absolutely ludicrous. The lack of community service, the community, like sociology, psychology, social work, like the fact that it's measured in weeks and not years, it is fundamentally, at best, worrisome, at worst, deadly. And I love the idea that there is something that gives our seniors the opportunity to see if it's something that's right for them. I worry that currently the way that it is designed attracts a very specific kind of person.
Interesting. So let me, without going too deep into the weeds.
Yeah.
So African-American officers, do you think that they do their job differently than Caucasian officers or Hispanic officers?
I think in general, officers of color this is just me speaking. This is my thoughts on this. I think
Off the record.
Off the record.
Off the record. Nobody's watching.
I think that officers of color, people of color who go into the police force, go in with the intention of doing better. They want to be that representation for their own community, right? And I think that they're walking into a very closed network. So you get two choices once you've gotten in, right? You've made it past any bigotry, any racism, any undercurrents of BS that you've had to get through to get your badge, right? And now you have the option of now you're faced with a choice. Do you continue to stand sentinel against all of the things that you know that are wrong in the system and fight an entire union, an entire department, an entire system that says conform, that says you're one of us now, protect us first, protect the system first?
I hear you.
Do you stand against that, or do you assimilate? Which is something that as a person of color, we are forced to do every single second of our lives. We are forced to assimilate. We are forced to change how we talk, how we walk, how we function, how we make everything about who we are is under scrutiny.
Yep.
And you assimilate or you struggle.
Yep.
And that's people
to be
color.
True to yourself.
Right.
And true to your family and community, I think is really difficult. And I cannot imagine what it is like. I mean, if I was African American one day, or give me a week, a month, a year, I would feel it and see it. I get it.
Yeah.
And I could visualize it
Yeah.
and say what this must be like. But no, there's nuances.
Right. But
There
layer
is
a
that-
badge over that. Layer
Yeah.
a protect and serve over that. Layer the brotherhood of the badge over that. And that is a weight.
Well, look at our officers in Richmond in the Iron Triangle, or you go over to Oakland, how difficult it must be if you're an African-American officer policing your own, but you've got folks in there who are carrying their Glocks. You got folks who are carrying their, it's a very difficult zone to be in. But I'm not making excuses for anybody. Yeah, if you go back to like the George Floyd situation and what you were saying,
Right.
any of those officers around the key officer, Chauvin, could have pushed him off.
Could have stepped in.
Yeah.
Could have interjected.
But they were like, oh, crap, what is this? And two of them were junior officers, I believe. And so it's like, holy cow. And then one's an Asian officer.
Right.
So it is that internal struggle of what am I seeing here? What is real here?
What is right? What is here? How do I align?
Yeah.
How do I align myself? And it's again to because it's a donut, it's a circle, right?
Yep.
To bring it back to our community and the alienation that occurs, that need for perfection, and those pressures that our youth and our community presents. You have that kind of need for assimilation, that need to put pieces of yourself down in order to fit into whatever that image of perfection is. I mean, it's still, like, you've heard of code switching, right?
What's that?
Code switching?
No.
So we're sitting here and having this conversation, right? And I'm very well spoken. I will say that about myself. I'm very well spoken, and I can articulate. I love the English language. I love words. I have had phone interviews and then come in for the in-person interview. This happened one time. I had a phone interview with somebody. They really liked my resume. They really liked what I was talking about. I came in and her brain-to-mouth filter malfunctioned hard. And she said, I didn't realize you were black.
Ooh, my God.
And that's what I'm saying. But so what she got was this. This is the voice that she got. She got my my SAT voice,
Yeah.
right? My professional voice.
Intellectual.
That's ain't what my kids get at home.
Yeah.
That's not the conversations I be trying to have with my kids when I walk in the door. I'm not trying to hear them talk about 8 million things when all I'm trying to do is get dinner on the table, right?
Yeah. Wow,
And I can move smoothly in between those. And they're just as much a part of me. All of those pieces, AVE, African American Vernacular English. I am not 100% versed in it, but I inherently understand that because it's part of my culture. And that is a different language. And that is something that I can move smoothly in. And I pick those up and I put them down, not just whether I'm at work or if I'm at home. I can read a room and see what face I need to put on to create the least resistance.
Do you remember Ebonics?
It's the same thing. African American Vernacular.
Is that what it is?
That's what it is.
Okay.
That
yeah.
is the...
Which I found preposterous. It was just such a, I think you can use it both ways. It's just like diversity. You can say, oh, diversity. But if you're being discriminated against, that's not diversity.
No.
And so I think that's a tough one. Yeah. But going back to what you were saying, did you get the job?
Oh, yeah.
Yay! Okay, so hold on. Her filter was.
She was just shocked. My voice didn't match my face.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah, that's it.
That was it.
I get it. Some people have a radio voice.
Yeah.
And then when you see them, you're like, like a female who may have like a sexy voice or something.
Right.
Then you see her and she's, not looking like the voice.
Right.
Okay, I get it.
It was just a brain to mouth filter, but
brain to mouth filter. I like that.
Brain to mouth filter malfunction.
Well,
but,
I learned so much from you. Seriously.
But to speak on that, like you have, affluent people of color in this community, and we don't. I mean, who are they?
Well,
what
Otis
are they
Bruce.
showing us?
Okay, let's talk about Otis Bruce a second. He's second in command of the district attorney's office, and he walks the walk, he talks the talk. I think that I would invite him to be with you. And do you know Otis?
We haven't met.
He ran for office at one point, district attorney's office. Been a Marin for decades, and but I could tell you, him, Marlon Washington, head of probation, Roger Crawford, head of HR for the county, Benita McLaren, who's head of HHS for the county. I know I'm missing one or two in there, and it's I think I said Brian Washington's head of general counsel for the county, or a county council. All these gentlemen and Benita, African Americans, which speaks volumes in one way. And I hope it's only the good way.
Right.
I don't want to go the bad way.
Me too.
Because these are very intelligent, intellectual folks who are trying to make a difference and not only manage what they have to manage their careers, but also hopefully making a positive impact within Marin County.
Right.
And so when I look at you, I want to invite you that if this working group is put together with the sheriff's office and it can fit into your schedule, would you be interested in?
I would.
I'd love to have you.
So very much. I don't know if it'll fit in my schedule.
Well,
I might have to switch some responsibilities around.
Yeah, but I have the way that I've succeeded in this county is I'm very mindful of other people's time, and I don't like wasting time. Other people's time. I'll waste my own time, but
that's incredible.
not others' people.
Yeah.
Because I think at the end of the day, kindness, compassion, understanding, trying to bridge the gap.
Yeah.
And I think that's when my wife and I met. The Soviet Union was falling apart, and there was actually called bridging. There was groups of citizens in America, groups of citizens in Russia that were bridging.
Okay.
And it was at the people level.
Yeah.
And that's what it takes.
Yeah.
And I think that within our communities in Marin County, same thing, because those folks in Ross and Tiburon who are living in their multi-million-dollar mansions, I'd love to take them over to the canal. I'd love to take them to Marin City.
There's such rich communities that are being missed out on, the incredibly rich culture. So the kids. Let's talk about the kids for a second, right? Let's talk about how they have this untapped reservoir of interest and curiosity, right? And once you get them into a space where they aren't posturing, where they're not trying to prove anything, you let them sit with each other, they will find that common ground authentically. And it happens over and over again. I mean, whether it's Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Cub Scouts, a sports team, so far as outdoor ed is a great way for different schools to connect in a way that is authentic. Something
Love
that
outdoor education.
it's amazing.
That to me is.
There's a private school in Marin County, and I can't get to it because it's kind of hush hush what they do. But they send their seniors on a trip, and it is without electronics, and it is a time of reflection and a time of connecting.
Love it.
And when my niece and my nephew came back from their trips, my nephew in particular, I asked him, what was the most poignant part of that? And he said, everybody came to the table and we talked about our issues. And I realized that everybody got up and walked away with their own issues. They realized that everybody has something going on, but they wouldn't want to be anybody other than who they are. And he said, we cried. We all cried for each other. And I was like, my big old 6'2" football player of a nephew is talking about how him and his classmates were just vulnerable with each other in that environment. And I'm like, that is that kind of community building. You know what I mean? That kind of being able to be vulnerable with people who are different than you creates a bond. It humanizes in a way that not a lot of other things do. And I think that's part of the frustration of the African American community, Black community, when we tell our stories, when we talk about our experiences, is it's a vulnerability. It's us putting our pain on display over and over and over, even though everybody sees it every day. Yeah. But each experience is personal and different. And all we're asking is to be heard and for there to be compassion in response to the things that we experience. And we are constantly met with, that didn't happen. I'm sure it wasn't that bad. Yeah. It couldn't have been like that. Or that was so long ago. Rather than it being met with compassion and grace, it's met with rebuttals.
Yeah.
And
negating it.
Yeah.
It negates it. And I think one of the wake-ups that I had was the driving while Black.
Yep.
I mean,
trip.
In all honesty, it's like you put me in a car, boom, I go down Anderson, no problem.
Yeah.
Put African American in a car, what kind of car is it? That's a different story too.
Yeah.
But if the car has a defect that you've got probable cause, the wrong officer, the wrong day, the wrong moment can say, "Oh, I'm going to pull you over and write you up."
Right.
And it is a system harassment that can occur.
Yeah.
And under the auspices of. Yeah. Whereas, oh, Mr. Dale, nice to see you today. Okay, I'm going to let you off with a warning this time because you were going 55 in a 35 zone.
Yeah.
Okay, good luck. Have a great day.
Yeah.
Boom.
It's
like
it is a thing. Driving while brown is depending on where you are in the world, obviously. Yeah. Depending on whether you're a man or a woman. Depending on whether you are male presenting or female presenting.
Yep.
Because we know that are the BIPOC community, the trans nature, they're doubly terrified because you bigotry of both sides,
Yep.
is terrifying. And, I've heard just some amazing ways that my community has kind of sidestepped these hurdles. I was reading an article about a woman who went on a date with a Black man, and she was super confused because he got in his car. He was a regular sedan, and there was a car seat and stuffed animals in the back window.
Oh.
And she was like, "Do you have kids?" He's like, "No, but I'm a lot less likely to be pulled over."
Oh, I love it.
Kids in the car.
I love it.
And I'm like, these are the things. But again, we also know, we have seen for a fact that is not necessarily going to save his life either.
Yeah, yeah. So I think what I'd love to have people think about, in their time ahead, is that, it's bridging those differences, bridging the gaps.
Yeah.
And understanding what it's like to stand in somebody else's shoes.
Yeah.
And this is a time where we need to reach out to others and say, "Hey, how you doing?"
Absolutely.
Because that simple...
And listen.
Yeah.
When you ask somebody... Speaking on that, we say it as greeting. "Hey, how are ya?" We say it as a greeting. It's not a question.
Yeah, no.
It's
I'm fine.
a greeting.
I'm fine.
Right?
Yeah.
If we say it as a question, How are you? And if you need to be specific because you only got 5 minutes for that person, how you doing right now?
Right.
Or how was your morning? Be specific, but
Yep.
be genuine. If you're going to ask how somebody is, ask how somebody is.
Yeah.
If you're just trying to greet somebody, say, hey.
Because a lot of people in struggle, they put on the facade.
Right.
And then before you know it, it's too late.
Right.
They're gone. And it is a tough one. And I agree with you. Make it time specific. There was an old comedy show that had it, but it's like people working together. Oh, how you doing? How fine. Okay. It's like, and by the third time during the day, it's like they're just zip, zip.
Yeah. It's
like,
non-invasive. It's we all put on these blinders, we put up these walls so that we can function with each other in a day-to-day, and that's fine. You know, we're allowed to create that safe space for ourselves as we move in the world. But if you have the opportunity to like open a window and stick your head out and greet somebody authentically, if you have the time, if you have the energy, if you have the emotional fortitude to do it, do it. Do it with a stranger. And if you don't, freaking smile. Just smile. Just smile. And don't do this. That's not a good look.
Yeah.
That's not a good It's not a good one. Smile. Smile like you're excited that that person made it another day.
You said it.
Smile like you're excited that that person made it another day. Show them that you're enthusiastic for their existence.
And help your kids. Because your kids right now, this is confusing times.
Yes.
And they're coming out of a pandemic. And they're hearing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And it is very tough.
Yeah.
And moms and dads and significant adults in their world, I think, need to help shelter them and help them comprehend what's going on. But also, like you said, listen.
Listen.
Make the safe space.
Find out what's worrying them about what they have heard. Don't just launch into what you think they need to hear. If, like my son, he heard about it, they talked about it at school, and I asked him, I said, does any of this worry you? And he's like, it feels really far away. And I was like, it is right now.
Yeah.
I'm like, but if you're not worried, then we can talk about it if you want to. He's like, I don't really need to. I'm like, okay, if you have any questions. He wasn't worried. It was so far distance from him that he couldn't sit with it.
Yeah.
And as the keeper of his innocence, I'm okay with that.
Exactly. No, I'm with you loud and clear. I just think that I'm just hopeful.
Yes.
That we work our way through this in the best way we can. Yeah. And
bombs dropping.
Yeah. No.
No. We're just no bombs.
I just think that coming back again to our world here in Marin County and the things that we can and cannot control.
Right.
I think that's a big part of it. And really just embracing each other. And I'm so glad that we've had our time together.
I know. It's endless, you guys. It's
endless.
I know. Until May. I have plans in May, but you get us.
You got it.
You get us all the way through April. But yeah, it's our kids are the most resilient. Kids in general are resilient. They come out of the womb that way, right? They're by design.
Yay, I'm here.
They're by design. They're resilient. They can live under vast conditions. They adapt exceptionally quickly. Their brain is built for speed.
Yeah. Otherwise, we would have died off a long time ago.
A long time ago. The things that they pick up, and we have the opportunity when our kids are young to shape the world in which they learn best, right? So, a kid who's under duress at home is not going to learn well. A kid who is scared at school is not going to learn well.
Yep.
And a kid who feels isolated and alone is left wide open for so many things. So if we can, as a community and as parents, understand that we need to create those safe spaces all over. We need to create them at the library. We need to create them on the school campus. We need to create them at the mall. We need to know that our kids need to know that they are safe.
Well, you know what's amazing, because your kids spend more time at school than their waking hours at home.
Yeah.
All right. So you do need adults around your kids who are in touch with them and observant and say, ooh, I see something going on here. And
which is why I love Loma Verde. They teach like I parent, and it is a blessing.
Oh, I love that.
They do.
Yeah?
They teach like I parent. They're an incredible
Elementary?
community. Yeah.
They K-5 or?
K-5, yeah.
K-5.
No, TK5.
TK,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So I love that because I think that's what needs to be heard and said.
Yeah.
But also when you go into the middle school, high school environment, especially high school, you have a lot of these peer resource classes throughout the county. And I support them 100% because this is usually a grouping of students who go there by choice, who are in this special class that they're educated, they're aware. Speakers come in. I've done it at Terra Linda High School. I've done it at Drake Archie Williams, where you go in and you speak to the peer resource class. And they're kind of the eyes and ears on the ground, hopefully, at the campus.
Okay.
To say, ooh, somebody's looking kind of dark.
Yeah.
You know, something's going on.
Right.
Or somebody who's under the influence.
That's an incredible program.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so that has been a big evolution.
Yeah.
And there's certain people who've made that happen in Marin County that only helps.
Yeah.
And that's what you need because, again, at those kids, those are their waking hours.
All day. 8 hours. It's a job.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're there like for 12 hours. I was at school in high school. I was at school from 7 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock at night.
Wow. Bingo. And so you're up in the morning, maybe a bite to eat, get out the door.
Yeah.
Then at home, you're burned. Yeah. You're burnt out.
Day's over. You're doing homework, stuffing something in your face and going to bed.
Yeah. So maybe you got 4 hours at home before you're hitting the sack or whatever. But again, it's going back to trying to take care of yourself, the self-coping mechanisms, the taking care of yourself, properly. Yeah, I think it's a huge thing. And I think that's a learned thing. But again, it takes mom, dad.
It's hard. I'm actually, it's a conversation that me and my counselor have had because I am really bad at self-care. And I'm constantly worried. I'm like, I have to lead by example. My kids are going to learn it from me and my husband, right? They're going to figure out how to navigate like being self-aware and being emotionally aware and being in tune with your own needs. They're going to learn that from us. And I'm like, I'm really bad at that, guys.
Yeah.
I'm really bad at that, but I'm working on it. And I'm aware that my kids, they learn it. They learned it from watching you, Dad. Do you remember that commercial?
Yep.
They pick up all of our nuances, down to the way that we communicate about our emotions. Having my son explain an issue to me, and for me to just sit with him and be present with him while he's expressing distress, and to be able to hug him, and his only response was, "Thank you for hearing me." Like,
what I look forward to is when he possibly is a father one day.
Oh my God, it's going to be amazing.
And how he's going to, and the flip of that is unfortunately people who've been in an abusive home. Yeah. Unless there's some work done along the way, right, they can become abusers themselves. Right. In their family. Right. And that's
breaking that cycle, the generational cycle of trauma is hard, and it requires a lot of inner work. A lot of inner work. Again, as you know, I said I'm in counseling. That's a lot of what I'm doing is really analyzing and processing a lot of what my childhood was, so that it doesn't affect how I parent and how, even those who don't necessarily recognize the inner work that needs to be done. Something as simple as recognizing that you're going to do you're not going to do what was done to you. It can be as simple as that. Like, this is what was done to me and it was awful, so I'm just not going to do that. That's a great starting point. It's a great starting point. Learning from other people's mistakes is just as much a part of human nature as learning from what other people do well.
Well, it's funny. You nailed it, because how many people have grown up in awkward situations, not necessarily abusive, and they decide somewhere in that brain, they go, ooh,
I didn't like that.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that
for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
That didn't work for me.
And what I love about our time together today is that we have covered a lot of bases. We've gone all around the place
rambled,
here.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's okay.
Yeah.
Because life is not talking points. Life is not structure.
It's an intertwine. It's a dynamic. It's absolutely a dynamic. One of the things, what time is it? I will leave. Oh, we gone over?
Did we?
So much time. It is 10:44 and I'm not even mad. One of the things that I learned when I was in school, my degree's in psychology, specifically gender and family studies. And my minor is in interpersonal communication. So I really wanted to focus on human interaction. That was huge. And I took a family dynamics class, and that was probably one of the most eye-opening behavioral science classes that I could have ever taken, because it was able to really explain how human interaction, one-on-one, familially, organizationally, is a moving dynamic. And that, rather than it being, A, B, C, that in between, that line is really what you need to be looking at. Not necessarily who A, B, and C are, but how A and B interact, and how B and C interact, and how that interaction between B and C affects the interaction between A and B. It's this big, swirling, moving, like those crazy jungle gyms, you see with all the, it's like that. And it's like that globally. It's like that within our community. You know what I mean? Like our conversation, our knowing each other and how we talk and how we connect affects every single person that I talk to.
Exactly.
And I'm aware of that.
Well said.
I reflect on these things. I implement the things that we talk about. I share the things that we talk about. That is the dynamic of the human existence. And the more people who are aware that they're the butterfly wings, you know what I mean?
Love it.
The more people who are aware of it, the more positive, the more intentional we can be with how we move through the world.
I love it. I love it. And so what I'd like to do, instead of going further on that one thought, so next time we're together, please remind me about Prince William and Prince Harry.
Okay.
And you'll understand.
Okay.
Okay.
Prince William and Prince Harry. Okay. We're going to end on a cliffhanger, guys. Thank you so much for joining us for Donuts for Breakfast by Desire to Inspire Studios. We went over. We started late, but that's okay. It was amazing. Me and Mark, we will see you next Thursday. Have a good one.
Thank you, guys.